Okay, I've started the record. I just had to run around to look for a lamp that had charge because we've just gone into load shedding now at 6 p.m. But I think I've found something that will work. Okay. Hi, Danelle, Jamie, Shanae. Nice to see you guys on. Just quickly sort myself out and okay, so let's just talk about the assignment document first while we've got that query up. So for anybody that's listening to this recording afterwards, the question is that there is an issue with downloading assignment 2, and I have also had emails from students to say they can download it, but they can't open it because they're getting that security error on it. So this has been a bit of a problem this year so far in 2023 with some of the assignments. And what happens is that because the assignments are basically top secret before they are issued to the students, they have got security, kind of like security passwords on them. And sometimes when the head office uploads the documents to the student materials, they haven't removed all of the security lockdowns from the document, and that's what's happened in this case. So I have sent an email to our online IT person. We've got an IT support person, and I've let them know. So I'm sure tomorrow sometime they'll sort it out, and then I will let you guys know. Okay, so I did download a version of student materials that I can open, but I obviously have got higher security clearance than students do. So I'm able to read the document, but I don't have permissions to print it, and I think you guys don't even have permissions to read it. But we will sort that out. If not tomorrow, then definitely this week, hopefully before, is it Thursday? That's the holiday. Yeah, I think the public holiday. Oh, wow. It's a short week. Thursday is the public holiday. So we've only got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But it will be sorted out. Thank you for letting me know, because if you guys don't let me know, then I don't know, there's a problem. So well done on those guys for letting me know. Always, always communicate. That's the best way to make sure that everything gets sorted out. Okay, has anybody else got any other questions? Anything at all to do with INAC or even your first assignment, although that's so long gone, I've forgotten about that. Anything else? You'll have opportunity to chat or ask questions as we go along. Remember, these sessions are not formal. The collabs are really an opportunity for students to have a live session with your tutors, so that if you have got any questions, sometimes it's just a lot easier to talk about it online instead of typing out these long emails where messages going backwards and forwards sometimes get a bit mixed up. Okay. So as always, though, I do prepare something to talk to you guys about in the collabs, even if there are no questions, just so that I can keep you motivated and working towards your next assessment. So in our case at the moment, your next assessment is your second assignment, but you guys are super lucky because of all of my modules, you guys are have to hand in your second assignment right at the very end of the semester. So your assignment 2 due date is only on the 7th of June. You've got a nice long time to prepare, and you only have to prepare basically 2 additional learning units to the 2 that you had to prepare for your first assignment. So you have got a nice long time to really get on top of learning unit 3 VAT and source documents, and learning unit 4 recording cash transactions. But while I'm saying that, these are 2 extremely important learning units. just as important as your learning unit 2, the accounting equation, and learning about that double entry system of always debiting something and crediting something with each entry. Because everything that you do for the rest of accounting 1A, and if you continue with accounting, you will use your VAT rules and your VAT calculations. And then in all the rest of the learning units that we do this semester, you will also use the VAT calculations and the information that they teach you about source documents. So learning unit 3 is super important. And then from learning unit 4, we start actually then learning how to enter transactions into our subsidiary journals, starting out with in LU4 our cash journals. So that will be the cash book receipts, the cash book payments, and the petty cash books. So those are the first 3 journals that you learn how to take a source document and then take the information off the source document and enter it into an actual journal. So this is when we actually start doing bookkeeping as such, where we are starting to record transactions in the books of the company. So take as much time as you need for this, because these learning units are the base learning units and they're very important. And then only for the exams do we need to then go on and do learning units 5 and 6, where you do the credit transactions. So if the company buys or sells goods on credit instead of for cash, and then all the sundry transactions that a company takes place, that can take place in a company, that we then record in the general journal. So in learning unit 5, we add another 5 subsidiary journals to the cash journals that you learn how to enter in learning unit 4. So by the time you get to the end and you're close to writing the exams, then you will have mastered entering transactions into the main subsidiary journals of a business. And that means by the end of this module, you will be able to do basic bookkeeping, what we call basic bookkeeping. Okay, so all right, we've gone a few minutes past 9 now, so I hope that everybody has joined. And if not, as always, the session is recorded and I will upload it tomorrow for you guys. Okay, so I was going through all my bits and pieces of information that I've got for this module, and I came across this document that I've got on the screen now that usually I introduce to the students when we're busy with exam preparation. But I thought that, seeing as how we have got still quite a few weeks to go before you need to do your exam prep, that I'm going to go through this document, or most of it anyway, with you this evening, because it does give you a heads up on those areas in the textbook that you have to really watch out for to make sure that you master the module, because these are the places where students most often make mistakes. So the last part of this document that I've got on the screen refers to learning unit 5 and 6. So that part I don't have to worry about this evening, but the rest of it I wanted to just quickly go through with you guys so that you have got some, you can already start thinking about, okay, how do I prepare myself for the exam? And the reason that I want to do that is because you guys know that with your assignments, they are, you sit at home and you've got plenty of time with your textbook to prepare the assignment. So it's a very different type of assessment when with the exam you are sitting down in an exam hall and you have got 3 hours to complete a paper from start to finish without a textbook in front of you. So right from now, you need to start preparing and practicing all of your learning units for those exam conditions. So that means that as you are learning, studying these different learning units, when it comes to when you've read through them and looked at the examples and worked through the information. When it comes to the questions at the end of each of the learning units, you must start practicing them with your workbooks by trying not to look at the solutions, and also making sure that you take note of how long you are taking, so that you try and coach yourself in really working quickly. And in this way, you're going to quickly pick up where you need more practice and where you are managing. Because the two things with the exam is that you need to be able to work through questions without looking at solutions in front of you, and you need to complete the questions in the 3 hours. So it's knowing the work really well without looking at the answers, and it's being able to do the work quickly and efficiently without error. And that's the way you need to start practicing right from now. Okay, so start thinking about that. So, okay, this top bit here is also really when you are sitting down writing the exam is what you need to do. So this is just saying that when you do get to the exam and you get those 15 minutes reading time before you start writing, what you need to do in those 15 minutes is read the questions thoroughly to familiarize yourself with exactly what are they asking me in this paper, and which of these questions do I know really well, and which of the questions am I not 100% sure of, and so I know they might take me a little bit longer to complete. Okay, that's what your goal is in that 15-minute reading time. And then you'll mark the questions, or you'll number them in order of preference in which you are going to complete the questions. Because remember, if there are 6 or 7 exam questions, you don't have to start at question 1 and work through 2 and then 3 and then 4. You are allowed to start by doing question 7 first, and then question 3, and then question 5, and then question 1. Remember that. You can do the questions in whichever order you best prefer. And what you're going to do is you're going to complete the questions. The first question you're going to do is the one that you know the best and that you can complete the fastest, so that you're quickly getting marks down on the paper. And then at the end of the 3 hours, the only questions that are left are the ones you need a little bit more time to think about or to do calculations. And then you don't have to worry about the rest of the paper. You know you've got marks down, and you can take your time with the questions that are left. This is very, very important exam strategy. So also start thinking about that now. Then the other thing, this second paragraph over here is about the learning objectives. So I have mentioned this quite a few times, that at the beginning of each of your learning units, both in your module outline and on Learn itself, you've got that bullet list of the learning objectives. So these are the learning outcomes that you will be tested on in the assessments and also in the exam. So they are basically telling you what they are going to ask you. So that means that you know exactly what questions to prepare from a theory point of view, because they are not allowed to ask you any question that is not a learning objective. So basically, this is like what we used to call in the old days spotting. You can spot what questions to study because those are your learning objectives. So also don't forget that always, before you start studying any one of your learning units, go and read the learning objectives and then locate them in the chapter, so that you know exactly where that learning objective is discussed, so that you know exactly which paragraphs you need to memorize or prepare questions for, theory questions for the exam, because your textbook won't be in front of you. Okay, and then something that I know you guys are probably going to be fed up with hearing from me by the time you get to the end of the semester, but I can't emphasize it enough. There is nothing that will get you through this module with flying colors other than practicing questions with your workbook in front of you and not looking at the solutions. Until and keep going back and practicing that same question over and over until you can complete the question correctly in a nice short amount of time. Then you know you're prepared for the exam. So really, honestly, guys, practice, practice, practice. That doesn't mean watching YouTube videos or reading anything else or listening to podcasts or anything other than sitting with your workbook and your questions or past papers and working those out without looking at solutions. So I always use the analogy of if you are an athlete and you are coming up for race day, and let's say you are a hurdles racer. What do they call them? A hurdles racer. You're not going to go down to the track and practice the high jump and then practice the long jump and then watch everybody else running sprints for a little while. If you are going to be running the hurdles race on race day, you're going to go down to the track, and hour after hour you are going to practice hurdling and all the skills need to get your hurdling correct. So that's exactly the same thing with accounting. Yes, it's fine, and you should watch some YouTube videos and read articles and practice other things and listen to podcasts. But the only thing that's going to get you to pass with a fantastic mark is that practice. Okay, so and I really can't emphasize how important that is. And then we've got some areas over here which you must make sure, and this is why I wanted to look at this document this evening, is that I want you to understand right from now that there are specific areas in this module that you have to master in order to manage the entering of transactions in journals correctly, which is what you're going to start doing in Learning Unit 4 and then Learning Unit 5 and then again in Learning Unit 6. And this is because the reason why I can say this is because I've marked very many papers over the years, and these areas here are the areas where students lose marks and they fall by the wayside because they can't do these particular calculations, or they haven't grasped these particular concepts. Okay, so I have spoken a little bit about this before, or should I say not spoken about it. I uploaded some practice documents for you guys in announcements for VAT calculations and markup calculations and gross profit calculations. So where the things that you have to master in your VAT chapter, and this means when I say master, it means you have to know them off by heart, because when it comes to the exams, you won't have your textbook. You're going to have memorized the different VAT categories and which items fall under the different categories. So remember, your VAT categories are your exempt items, your zero rated items, your standard rated items, and then your non-allowable items. So zero rated, exempt, and non-allowable, you have to memorize which items fall under those three categories. And then anything else, any other purchases or sales that you make will be standard rated goods. Okay, so that's very important. And then secondly is the actual VAT calculations themselves. So as those worksheets that I gave you, sometimes they give you the VAT inclusive amount, and you have to calculate the VAT amount and the VAT exclusive amount. Sometimes the amount that they give you is the VAT exclusive amount. And from that amount, you've got to calculate the VAT amount and the VAT inclusive amount. And if you can't do those calculations, you will not be able to enter transactions into your journals correctly, because all of our journals require us to put the VAT inclusive amount in the main column, which for your Cash books is the bank column. That bank column is always VAT inclusive. And then the columns on the right-hand side, you then have a VAT column and a sales column or an inventory column or something else. And those will then be the VAT amount itself and the VAT exclusive amounts. So if you can't do the calculations, you're not going to be able to get the correct amounts in all of the different columns in your journals. So guys, again, all you've got to do is sit down with a couple of worksheets or a couple of questions in your textbook and just practice them. Take an hour just to practice VAT calculations until you understand them and you know them off by heart, and you don't have to ever think about them again because they will come automatically to you. You have to memorize them and you have to practice them so that you know what you're doing. And that goes for the same thing for the markup and the gross margin or gross profit calculations. You also have to be able to perform these calculations in questions because we have to be able to calculate the cost of sales amount every time we've got a sales transaction. Again, so that in our cash book receipts, for instance, and in our debtors journal and debtors allowances journal, we can calculate what the cost of sales was for each of every time we make a sale to one of our customers, we can calculate what the cost of that sale was so that we can enter that amount in the column in our journals. So if you can't do those calculations, again, you're not going to be able to get this the correct amount in the cost of sales column. Again, you've got worksheets, you've got examples in your textbook, and again, take an hour and just put that hour aside purely just for practicing and memorizing how to do those calculations. The maths is not difficult. It's really honestly just a matter of practicing so that you get used to it and that you get comfortable with it and you don't doubt yourself. When you see a transaction, you know, okay, yes, I know how to do that because I've memorized it, and this is what the calculation is for markup, and this is etc. Okay, so that's the whole purpose of practice, is that practice makes you comfortable and confident in executing whatever it is that you've practiced. Then the other thing as well, and this is bound to come up in the exams, is again, making sure that you know the difference between the periodic inventory system and the perpetual inventory system. Because in a question in the exams, they will say to you, here's a list of transactions. We want you to enter them into the following journals. And this company uses the periodic inventory system, or this company uses the perpetual inventory system. Because just with a few of the transactions, and that's mainly those transactions that involve inventory, there are some differences in the way we enter those transactions into our journals, whether our company uses the periodic system or whether they use the perpetual inventory system. So remember, that will only affect your inventory transactions. It's not everything else. So again, it's just a limited number of transactions that you have to memorize the difference for. So it's not a massive thing, but it is something that, again, that if you don't know those differences, you're going to be throwing marks away. Okay, so Jamie's got a question. That's no problem if it's off topic. Yeah, if you do think of a question while we're chatting, type it in the chat box, and then even if I don't answer you immediately, I'll come back to it when I'm looking for questions at some point in the collab. Yes, absolutely, Jamie, that's fine. Yeah. So the question is, with your ICE tasks, can you write them or type them in Word and then submit them in PDF? So obviously, it will depend on what the ICE task is. If it's an ICE task that requires you to write a paragraph or describe something or compare something, and it asks you to upload a document, then yes, you will prepare that, prepare your answer in Word, convert it to a PDF, and then upload the PDF. Okay. Yeah, there's just some parts of those ICE tasks that, for instance, I'm just trying to think if it's a task that is like a wiki or a discussion. If you upload a PDF, it's difficult for me to read your answer. So maybe what you should do is type your answer in Word and then copy your answer, Control-C, and then go to the wiki and then Control-V and you copy it into wherever it goes, because in that way I'll be able to read it. But if you're confused when you're doing the ICE task, then just send me a message and I'll help you, because it obviously depends on the particular ICE task that you're doing. Okay, and then the next thing, I can't remember specifically if I have given you guys this hint before, but when it comes to memorizing, and this again is something you have to memorize, when do I debit an account and when do I credit an account? If you've got some kind of a little memory jogger that you can quickly jot down on your question paper somewhere, and that you can then refer to for all your transactions and questions, and it will help you to remember. And that's what this dead click is. So you only have to remember these two words, dead click. So the DEAD, these are the account types that increase on the debit side. And the click accounts, these are the account types that will increase on the credit side. So remember, in our general ledger, our general ledger is a T, what we call a T account. The left-hand side of the T is where we write down amounts if we want to debit that account. And the right-hand side of the T is the column where we write amounts down if we want to credit that account. So how do we know when do I write the amount on the left-hand side of the account and when do I write the amount on the right-hand side of the account? So left-hand side debit, these are the D, so D for DEAD stands for debit. That's not going to, sorry, I forgot. Okay, so EAD, expense accounts, assets, and drawings. Those three account types always increase on the debit side. So if I've got if I have got more expenses, then I'm going to debit my expense account stationery, or I'm going to debit my account wages. If I have purchased new assets and my assets are going to increase, I'm going to debit the asset account vehicles or debit the asset account computers. Or my bank account is also an asset account. So if someone deposits cash into my bank account, I'm going to debit the asset account bank. D is the drawings account, which is one of my proprietary accounts. It's my owner's account, and you don't use that account very often. It's only if you're doing a transaction with the actual owner of the business itself, and we only use the drawings account if the owner is either taking cash or goods out of the business for his own use. And if the owner does that, then we also debit the drawings account. So if the amount of cash or the amount of goods that the owner has taken from the business is increasing, we debit his drawings account. So expenses, assets, and drawings increase on the debit side. So obviously, if we want to decrease an asset or decrease an expense, and the only time we'll ever decrease an expense is if we are correcting an error that we made and we need to credit the expense account. But if we need to decrease it, we will then credit the expense, asset, or drawings account. And then the exact opposite is for the click account. So these are the accounts that increase on the credit side, the right-hand side. L for liabilities, I for income, and C for capital. So liabilities, those are all of the account names that we use to indicate money that we owe to somebody else, like trade creditors or loan account or our mortgage account. So if the amount that I borrow from the bank, or the amount that I owe the bank for my mortgage, or the amount that I owe one of my suppliers increases, I am going to credit that liability account. And then income, we can have various different types of income. I can have rental income. I can have a sales transaction. I can have a services rendered. I can have interest received. Those are all income type accounts. So when I make a sale, receive interest, or invoice somebody for rent, I will credit that income account. And then C for capital. So capital is the other owner's account. The two proprietary accounts are capital and drawings. And capital is the account that we credit when the owner, when the owner transfers either money or goods from his own personal account to the company. So when the owner makes a contribution to the company, we credit his capital account to indicate that the company now owes him whatever that amount is that he has donated to the company. Okay, so just remember those two words. And then obviously that's easy to remember, but then you also have to be able to identify which accounts are expenses, assets, and which accounts are liabilities and income. And that again will require a bit of memorization on your part. So if you go and look in your textbooks on page 52, you've got that chart of accounts. And that's a really nice page to use to quickly practice and memorize which accounts belong under assets and which accounts belong under liabilities, etc. So if you even photocopy that page and stick it up somewhere where you sit and do your studies, that will help you a lot. And then you'll memorize which accounts are assets and liabilities, income and expenses, and then you will also memorize using dead click which ones increase on the debit and increase on the credit side. Just this alone is going to help you massively do better in accounting. Okay. And then just a little bit of recap from Learning Unit 2, which again, these are the places that students most often forget and make mistakes. And this is why I'm going over them again. So your accounting equation, can't emphasize also how important that is. So we know that the accounting equation says that our assets equal owner's equity plus liabilities. So if I take my owner's equity and I add it together with my liability total, that total must exactly equal the total of all of my assets. And then my accounting equation is in balance. So whenever you record a transaction, you must make sure that you have either debited the assets account, and if you've increased the left-hand side of the equation, you must have increased the right-hand side of the equation as well. If you've decreased the left-hand side of the equation, you must have decreased the right-hand side of the equation as well for each transaction. Otherwise, that's Learning Unit 2, Mishka, from that. The accounting equation is in Learning Unit 2. Otherwise, your accounting equation won't balance. And remember that some transactions will increase an asset and decrease an asset at the same time. For instance, if you pay cash for a computer that you've purchased, your asset computers will be increasing and your asset bank will be decreasing. So you will be increasing and decreasing the left-hand side of the equation at the same time, which also means that after you've recorded that, the equation is still in balance because the net effect of the change to your assets was 0 because your total assets increased and decreased by the same amount. Oh, Mishka, the whole exam is all your learning units, from learning unit 1 all the way through to learning unit 6. You will get questions on every single learning unit. Obviously, you will get learning units 5 and 6. Those are the 2 that you won't have been tested on in your assignments, but the exam does include all of the learning units. Okay, and then in your textbooks as well, if you remember what they call the expanded accounting equation, is where we have to break down that the owner's equity part of the accounting equation. So how do we calculate owner's equity? So here is your calculation for owner's equity. Owner's equity, we calculate that amount by taking capital minus drawings. And you can see that that's in brackets. And then we add to that income minus expenses. So for each individual financial year, we start at 0 with our income and our expenses and our drawings account. And we record our income for each individual year and our expenses for each individual year. Then at the end of that financial year, we say income minus expenses equals my profit for that specific year. And that's how we are able to calculate how much profit did I make this year, by recording our income for the year and subtracting the expenses for that year. And then when we've done that calculation, all of my income minus all of my expenses, and I have worked out what the profit amount is, income minus expenses, I add it to my capital account so that my owner's equity at the end of the year is my capital from the beginning of the year, opening balance, minus drawings for that particular year, plus the profit for that particular year. And once I've done that calculation, I go to all my income and all my expense accounts and I zero them so that when I start my new financial year, I can start adding up my income and my expenses for the new financial year from 0 all over again, so that when I get to the end of the next financial year, I can also work out what my profit was for that year. Okay. So in your textbooks, in your Learning Unit 4, there's a very good question, question 4.8, as well as the 3 examples that lead up to question 4.8. If you can master those 3 examples and understand and all the transactions, all the calculations, and how to work out all those examples, and that you can do question 4.8 in the textbook, then you will have mastered all of these items here that I've been talking about now. So this is then a very good question to test yourself with and to practice with for these first 4 learning units before the exam. And then once you get to learning unit 5, which you'll only do after you finished assignment 2, because learning unit 5 is only for your exams. If you get to question 5.2, part 3, this is very important to understand the difference between trade discount and settlement discount. But we'll only start working on that once we do your credit transactions in Learning Unit 5. I will post this document that I've got on the screen now. I will post this up for you in your announcements and in more resources, so you've got it to refer to. And please, I would honestly maybe just print this document out and keep it tucked into your textbook so you can keep testing yourself. These are the things that ma'am said, if I don't know how to do these, I'm not going to do well in my exam. And you can keep coming back and then practicing them. There is a second page to this document as well, but this most of this section over here is we just have a look. This bit over here is for the exams, Learning Unit 5. So we don't need to look at that tonight. And here are a few common errors that students make. And there's a couple over here that refer to the VAT chapter that I want to mention. Again, it's because students make these same errors over and over again in their journals or their calculations. So you'll notice in all of your subsidiary journals that you are going to do from Learning Unit 4 to the end of your semester, they all have a sundry accounts column over on the right-hand side. Students sometimes get very confused with what to do with this sundry column. I'll just quickly find a page number in my textbook so I can refer you to that. Oh my goodness, this working in the dark. Okay, for instance, if you go to page 114, page 114, you'll see that on that page is where we've got the structure of the cash book receipts. And you'll see columns 10, 11, and 12 all fall under the heading Sundry Accounts. So in all your subsidiary journals, you will find those 3 Sundry Accounts columns in all of them. So the purpose of that column is that because all of our subsidiary journals, we've only got an A4 page to write all of our columns on. And so we only use a full column. In other words, if you're looking on page 114, column 8 and column 9, in this cash book receipts, we've got a column heading for services rendered and a column heading for sales, because those are the types of transactions that I will most often have to enter in my cash book receipts. So I want a whole column for them because I'm going to use that column often throughout the month. I'm going to have lots of sales. I'm going to invoice lots of services rendered. So I'm giving that account its own column. Then for the other types of receipts that I've got, interest received, rent received, I'm probably only going to receive rent once in the entire month, and interest received, the bank will pay me my interest only once a month at the end of the month. So I don't need to have a whole column for rent received and a whole column for interest received, because that would just be wasting space across my page. So what we do as bookkeepers is we then make this one column for sundry accounts, and then all those other transactions that are only going to take place once or maybe twice in the month, I use the sundry column instead. So you'll see that in the sundry column, I have got amount, folio, and details. So we can ignore that folio column for the moment. So the amount is then going to be the amount of my rent received, excluding VAT, the amount of interest received, and interest doesn't have VAT to start with, so it will be all the interest received. And then in the details column, I will then put the name of the account that I have to credit for that amount. So under amount, I'll put the amount of the rent excluding VAT, and under the details column, I will write rent or rental income. And under the amount column, I will put the amount of the interest received, and then under the details column, I will write the word interest received or interest income. So that sundry accounts column, when you read it from the top going down throughout the month, will have several different account names in the details column. And those are just the accounts that I have used. Instead of having an entire column, I've just summarized them in the sundry accounts column. And that's purely a safe space-saving measure. That's why I'm doing it. So that also means that that sundry accounts column, you must total it at the bottom, because those amounts in the sundry accounts column do form part of your, in this case, cash book receipts, of the credits that will have to be added up to make up the total debit that I will have in the bank column. Okay, so my main bank column in my cash book receipts and in my cash book payments, the total in that bank column, and in the petty cash column, it will be your main column is the column headed petty cash. The total in that column has to balance to the combined total of all the other columns to the right-hand side of that main column. So if you look at your cash book receipts on page 114, when I total my bank column, column number 6, and when I then have to total column number 7 plus column number 8 plus column number 9 plus column number 10, those 4 columns added together, that total must exactly equal whatever the total in my bank column is. Because in this way, I can then prove that my accounting equation is going to balance, and the bank account that I am going to debit, I am also going to equally credit all of the other accounts. And all of your subsidiary journals work like that. Whatever the main account column is, which is always that first column, that total has to exactly equal all of the other columns on the right-hand side added together. And in our cash book receipts, you'll see that the column number 13 on the right-hand side is headed cost of sales. And you can see there's a little gap. It's not joined to the other columns. And that's because that cost of sales column stands on its own as a separate journal entry. And whatever the total in that cost of sales column is, I am going to debit cost of sales and credit my inventory account with that same amount. It doesn't form part of my columns from column number 6 to column number 12. Okay, so I've put in this little note here excluding the cost of sales column in the cash book receipts, which is a double entry all on its own. Okay, so once you've got yourself a little bit more familiar with the subsidiary journals and you've practiced with cash book receipts and cash book payments and petty cash, come back and read this little paragraph and make sure you understand it, because it will also help you to understand subsidiary journals. And the whole purpose of doing a subsidiary journal is because we collect similar types of transaction into one place, so that at the end of the month we can add all those columns up, get totals for the columns, and then it's only those column totals that we then post into our T accounts in the general ledger. And then what that does is it saves space in our general ledger, so we don't have our general ledger full of every single transaction that took place during the month. All the detail for the transactions are in our subsidiary journals, and we have only posted the totals into the general ledger. Then you must always remember that with VAT on rental, so in your VAT category section, you will see that I can never remember if it's VAT exempt or zero rated. Let me just quickly find this, page 80. So rent for housing. So housing means a place where people are living. That type of rent is VAT exempt. We never add rent to domestic rental. but commercial or business rental is a standard rated supply. So if you as a business are paying rent to another business for your offices or your factory premises, that rental will include VAT. If you as a business are renting out a flat at the back of your property to somebody to live in, that rental, you may not add VAT to it because domestic rental is VAT exempt. So just remember that, because students, whenever they see rental, they kind of think, oh, I know that there's something to do with VAT exempt, and then they can't remember what it is. Business rental includes VAT, domestic rental is exempt. And then VAT on bank statements, this always confuses students, again, because they know that there's something funny about VAT with the bank statement, and then they get confused with what it is. So normal standard rated goods and services, businesses have to charge VAT on that. So remember, a bank is a business, and they are a business that are providing services to their customers, and they charge us bank charges for rendering those services, for allowing us to bank our money with them. So bank charges do include VAT because that is just a normal service that the bank is rendering to us. When it comes to interest, all interest, whether you as a business are charging your customers interest or whether the bank is charging you interest or paying you interest, interest is also always exempt from VAT. So no interest will ever include VAT at all. So on your bank statement that you get from the bank, you will have an item called bank charges. That includes VAT. You'll have an item called interest received or interest charged. That will not include VAT. Then with municipal accounts, a very similar story. Part of the municipal account will be normal standard rated services that the municipality is providing to you, and so they will include VAT. But the item on your municipality bill that says rates and taxes, that will never include VAT because rates is already a tax, and so we don't tax a tax. So rates will never include VAT. They are exempt from VAT because they basically is already a tax. But everything else on your municipal account, water, electricity, refuse removal, those are normal standard rated services that the municipality is providing to you, and so they will attract VAT. Okay. Those, I can't tell you guys, over and over and over again, the students, those are the places that the students make their mistakes. So don't you be that student. You make sure you memorize these, you know these differences, and that you understand how to do that. So this last section here is about those last couple of learning units, which I'm not going to talk about tonight because you only have to do up to the end of learning unit 4 for your assignment 2. Okay. So does anybody else have any questions for me now for anything in your learning units up to the end of learning unit 3 or learning unit 4? What I'm going to do, just to let you know, our next collab is on Monday, the 8th of May, so not too long in the future. And in that learning unit, we'll take a look at learning unit 4, which is then going to be your recording cash transactions. And I'll revise some of that, some of learning unit 4 with you. And then we will also have one more collab after that on the 22nd of May, where we can also revise Learning Unit 3 and 4. And then only when we get to the 31st of May have we got our national support session, which is specifically going to be centered around the actual assignment document itself. So after tonight, we have still got 3 collabs before you have to hand in your second assignment. So there's plenty of time to revise Learning Units 3 and 4, and there's plenty of time for you guys to ask questions about those 2 learning units. Okay, guys, so what you should do is just send me an email or a message to let me know if there's any specific part of those 2 learning units that you're not sure of, that you want me to go over in those collabs. Otherwise, I will just do general revision with you, maybe go over definitely on the 22nd of May, that last collab before the NSS, I'll maybe go over some questions from Learning Units 3 and 4 with you, and you can start getting some practice. Okay. Thank you very much, guys, for joining tonight. I hope it has been helpful. There we go. You can answer that for me just so I can get an idea. Hopefully, it's just been, I always try to, in these collabs, because we are restricted with the time we have together, because we're not full-time students, I always try and concentrate on those areas that I know that students get stuck with, or those areas that I know the students commonly make mistakes, so that I can just give you a heads up so that you know which areas to concentrate on. Okay, Mega, question 4, when you say question 4 for what? In your assignment 2? Oh, assignment 1. Let me just have a look. Have I not already done that? Did you, were you in the last collab that we had on the 17th of April? Were you in that collab? Because with that collab, I went over all the answers for your assignment 1. Did you see that? And also the video is uploaded to your YouTube if you want to go and watch that. Or is there something very specific in that question that you didn't understand? Okay, go and have a look at it if you haven't already. And then if there is still something in that, if there's something specific in that question 4 that you didn't understand, then I will with pleasure go over it with you. Oh, lost my pencil. Where did I put it? Okay, perfect. Thank you for the question. I really appreciate questions, because then I know I can gauge where you guys are battling. Okay, guys, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. I see you did say, most of you, that that it was helpful. So I'm going to just quickly stop the recording now so that the recording isn't too long.